Okay, what I do with barrel cleaning is basically go through and do a basic run-in. So 1 shot, clean, 2 shot or 5 shots or whatever it is. A very quick process nowadays. Largely barrels need very little, but it's me so I can see what's going on. And beyond that point, what I do is I monitor things. So I monitor what my group's doing, I monitor what my load's doing, and after every shoot, I run a patch through it. That's pretty much what I do. If I've got any questions, and I suppose sometimes nowadays with a bore scope side of things, I will just have a look and see what's going on. And that's at 100 rounds or something like that. I'll go through and check things. Largely the way I do things, I'm doing a lot less rounds through a barrel before I'm changing to do another caliber or whatever it is of the things I'm doing, but do a little bit of monitoring things. But largely for the rifles that I've had for a long time, and more the way people mostly use them, is I will just do a simple, slightly wet mop after I've had a shoot to make sure I leave a slight film of oil in there and nothing else. And that's all I do with the barrel. And I suppose that is talking about the equilibrium. That's talking about the fact that I really get where the rifle's shooting well. I want to leave it there. And in almost all cases I've seen, I can. That's where it stops. That's where the conversation is. That's all the cleaning I do. And then the life of the rifle carries on. Periodically I run into a problem, and then whether that's carbon fouling or that's copper fouling, it's more rounds that I've found, problems I've found in other rifles that I've tested, but that then you go through and do what you've got to do to clean that. And whatever the level, keep in mind all the things I've said about solvents, abrasives, all that sort of stuff, but get it to clean and try and get it back to that equilibrium level. I don't fully understand why some guys will talk about lots of fouling problems and bits and pieces, and I don't tend to see them. My suggestion is, or my thoughts on it is, that both the way I shoot, I don't run things too fast, I try not to run things too hot, but I tend to be running, my hot is with heavier bullets that are never traveling super fast. I think with super fast and with high twists, and guys running with more twist and trying to push more speed out of, and light bullets trying to run more speed, all that sort of stuff, you end up with more speed, more gyroscopic forces, more load on the bullet, and there's more copper laying down. And I think also, I'm largely a burger bullet fan, but I think the type of bullet and the type of copper, that sort of stuff you run, whether it's monolithics, all sorts of things. There's all sorts of different things can can change it. The only problem I have in that understanding is why I don't really see the problem, but that's sort of the ingredients of what I can tell you about that. That's the barrel. The rest of cleaning, well, it comes into, I suppose, products I do use all the time, which are the normal product. As I've mentioned many times on the channel, I use Ballistol. Could use something like this. There's gun oil or whatever it is, there's G96, and there's lots of good synthetics and all sorts of smart gun oils out there that will do the job really well. I use Ballistol because I've always had it, I've always liked it, it always works well for me, and it suits what I do. I'm not trying to say it's the best thing, it's what I use. In the proper gun cleaning products, I do use these hops. These are still 7/8 full, and I've had them for, I don't know, 15 years, those 2 bottles type thing. So I use the carbon and the copper, and in truth, or if you can see it in the lens there, in truth with me, I think I suppose I'd say in the solvent side of things is I'm absolutely no expert there. I've done so little with it because of the way I do things. I've done so little with it. I'm not the person to talk. I've never used the gun pastes, the barrel paste, and that sort of stuff. So not an expert there. Not saying it's wrong. It's just not what I do. Largely, I use patches to a degree. So I have different sizes of patches is what I use. And I have a range of the normal sort of range of bits and pieces, whether it's the little where you put your patch through there and pull it through, whether it's using a jag. I do have brushes and bits and pieces. I largely use mops, like I've said. So I'll largely have on the end a mop like this, all the appropriate mops of the sizes that I want for my different barrels, and I've got a dozen different push throughs that I use for different things, trying to make sure I can do the job as thoroughly as possible. That's my barrel cleaning, like I said, and I do very little of it. no more than what I've said. Doesn't mean I don't do a fair bit of cleaning on rifles on occasion. Making sure the chamber's clean, just a chamber mop type thing, go through them, just make sure there's no carbon, that sort of stuff, keep it largely clean, and a light dose of oil. Always end up with a mop, whatever last goes through a rifle has a bit of oil on it, including an oily rag, which is what I'll tend to wipe actions down with things, so the oil is never completely dry around me. I want to keep it clean, but I want to leave a tiny bit of oil on it. Trigger wise, I tend to do very little with them. I try and keep them clean, keep stuff out of them, but I tend to do very little with them. If I do clean something like a trigger, and I suppose I don't know, I've never been taught what to do. What I have always done with my handguns and all the rest of it is I use contact cleaner, CO cleaner, CO2 cleaner, whatever it is, but contact cleaner. It's a very low solvent, no residue, and because this solvent is what it is, it means that when you wash things through, it pushes most of the stuff out, but it'll leave a residue of the oils and bits and pieces that are there. So you're not drying things off with completely using this. The other thing I use, and this once again a bit more from my car world, this is a really aggressive petroleum solvent, so carby cleaner, that's what it's made for. And I'll use that when I really want to try and cut the oils out of things and clean things thoroughly down that level. So when I clean something with no oil on it, then I'll tend to use this. If I just want to clean and make it dry, but happy to leave residue, then I use the contact cleaner. Where I use the contact cleaner, well, I suppose the carby cleaner I'll use if you're trying to get stuff out of the barrel, other stuff out of the barrel, and get it completely dry. If you want to clean grease off things, then this does a good job of that sort of stuff, of cutting it out. Getting through carbon, that's what it's designed for in the way of the carby cleaner side of things. Contact cleaner is probably the bit I use most with firearms. Use it with my handguns, and I use it with, as I said, if there's gunk in a trigger, then I will just wash through the trigger with this. I just spray around and I spray in there and wash through. I'll tend to do it on my white melamine bench that I've got in my gun room, with a rag to catch things, but I want to see what comes out. So I see the black carbon and things that comes out. And really the place I probably do the most cleaning on is the bolt. The bolt is, you have the obvious cleaning where you go through, I use a little old toothbrush and clean out any of the brass that you'll find in the bolt face. Clean around the back edges, the bits and pieces, and I'll give it a wipe down the outside. But largely you can obviously pull bolts down and go through that process of cleaning. I very rarely pull a bolt down. What I do is I'll use the contact cleaner in all the orifices, and I'll spray until I get a flow through of the contact cleaner. I'm sure there's gunsmiths, I'm sure there's people who say, well, that's the wrong thing to do. You need to leave a little bit of lube in there, or you need it completely dry, or whatever the conversation is. I've found over the years of doing it that the contact cleaner will wash out the carbon. I tend to find when I have pulled them down afterwards, they'll still tend to be a very light film attached to things, like they are still got a protective coating in there, but they're not clinging to anything. And you'll be surprised, of brand new rifles to rifles that are 20 years old to everything in between, if that hasn't been cleaned through there, it is a place where when a rifle fires, even a center fire and a bolt action rifle, there's actually carbon going everywhere for an instant, tiny molecules of it. There's also some of the building processes and things like that, you'll find new ones, but you tend to find a nice little dark grey, black puddle comes out of a bolt. And if I have done it also when a bolt all of a sudden starts to get a little hang fire, a little click, and it just doesn't feel right, quite commonly, most commonly, that's from the Remington 700 to a Seiko, to a, listen, I'm not trying to mention any brains and blaming even what I'm trying to say to a how, all of them I've found that occasionally start to feel a little weird. Sometimes it doesn't feel weird, I'm just cleaning it, but the main thing I do is clean it, and yes, you can get stuff that starts to get in the road of the firing pin, and so to actually keep that clean is valuable. Very rarely do I have to do anything. I suppose the bit I'd say in cleaning, on the rare occasion I do clean a barrel properly, I know you can do it in a fully assembled rifle, but if I'm getting to the point of using solvents and things, then I tear it down. I just use a barrel in action, is how I clean them down. I do it so rarely, not an issue, and I get most people are going to do that. In the guys that competition guys don't want to tear it to pieces, but for me, I'll tear it down and I'll put the barrel and the action, and sometimes in those cases take the trigger off. It's not that much work to do, and I'll clean it out thoroughly there. The rest of it, obviously, just wiping down and making sure things are clean is what I'm up to. The bit that I would say that I do mainly, other than that, is lube the bolt. So a very important thing, I use a little bit of the gun grease, so white Teflon gun grease, and I put that on the back of the bolt. Is probably the most important place to have a little tiny piece there. When the bolt goes in and locks up, and when it comes back out, it's metal sliding against metal on those points there, which is on the front face of the lockup points in your action. So a little bit of lube there is super important, and I'll tend to also make sure there's a tiny bit of lube. I'll use, whether it's the gun grease or it's ballista or whatever it is, to make sure that the actual bolt itself is shiny with oil, not dripping, but shiny with oil, so that you get the smoother action, you get less wear, everything's nicer when metal's rubbing against metal. And I think, well, and I suppose if you are cleaning a rifle and getting to the point of a good thing to do, I've always done it, well, since a long time ago, is occasionally I will check the base bolts rather than wait until I feel a loose scope or something like that. And if it's Loctited down properly, all that sort of stuff, then it shouldn't happen. But what's it hurt to put a spanner on things and check things occasionally? Whether that's action bolts, because you never pull it out, I quite regularly pull them to pieces, but whether it's action bolts, but certainly your rail, making sure it's tight, making sure everything, bits and pieces are tight, is probably the rest of the process. Okay, well, that turns into a great video. I might have to cut that up, but I think that should explain pretty thoroughly what I'm trying to end up with in that conversation. There we go. What I'm trying to end up with that conversation is not a way to clean your rifle. There isn't a way to clean your rifle. It is, as I started with, horses for courses. So doing the right thing really comes more down to what suits you. And to be truthful, there is some grey areas about what really, if you're really going to try up with what works best. The main bit I would like to say is that because the competition guys clean more, doesn't necessarily mean you should clean more or need to clean more. I find extreme accuracy out of cleaning very, very little. But there's details involved. So just food for thought, something to work out what suits you. Feel free to drop comments on what you do down below. Yeah, that's about what I got for you today. I hope that was worth something. Thanks for checking in. I'll catch you next time.